Are You Sleeping? Where can you get your lunch?
It's a really fascinating place in that the water surface is about 50 feet below the land surface. So it's essentially a collapsed cave or cavern. And so when the ceiling fell in about 60,000 years ago, it exposed the aquifer or the groundwater. And so the spring doesn't actually flow out into a stream. It's just a body of water that you can see that has unknown depth.
Devil's Hole is in the middle of the Mojave Desert. It isn't easy to get to or see. It's surrounded by fences, topped with barbed wire, and there are cameras everywhere. In April of 2016, police were called to Devil's Hole with reports of an incident. The fence surrounding it had been breached, and when police arrived, they found shotgun shells. They immediately started collecting fingerprints and footprints. But the victim in this case wasn't a human. It was a tiny fish. A very special fish that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. The Devil's Hole pupfish. The pupfish have large eyes and large heads. Scientists in the 1950s named the fish for their playful behavior because the fish reminded them of puppies underwater. The Devil's Hole pupfish are some of the first fish that were protected under the Endangered Species Act of 1967. At the time, their population averaged only 200 fish in the spring and 450 in the fall. Scientists estimate that the pupfish has lived in Devil's Hole for over 10,000 years. And the only place in the world that you will find the Devil's Hole pupfish is in this one opening there in Nevada. Nowhere else will you find this species.
Nowhere else in the wild can you find the Devil's Hole species outside of Devil's Hole.
This is Kevin Wilson, an aquatic ecologist at Death Valley National Park. He's worked with the pupfish at Devil's Hole for over 14 years. The security cameras around Devil's Hole are part...
I'm Anna Sale, and I host Death, Sex, and Money. It's a podcast where people open up about the things they think about a lot and need to talk about more. Join our community. Find Death, Sex, and Money wherever you get your podcasts.
Listener supported. WNYC Studios.
This is the New Yorker Radio Hour, a co-production of WNYC Studios and the New Yorker.
Welcome to the New Yorker Radio Hour. I'm David Reynolds. In the weeks since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, many states have issued abortion bans and restrictions, like the Ohio law that's become infamous, forcing a 10-year-old victim of rape to travel out of state. At the same time, many governors and legislatures have acted to protect reproductive rights. And with no federal law above them, we may see neighboring states in direct conflict over the right to travel for an abortion. New Mexico's governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham, has declared the state a reproductive safe haven between Arizona and Texas. Days after the Dobbs decision, she issued an executive order to protect New Mexico's abortion providers from legal action by those other states. Lujan Grisham represented New Mexico in the Congress for 3 terms, and she was elected governor in 2018. Governor, I think we knew that the decision from the Supreme Court was coming once the opinion leaked. But I would love to know what your reaction was on the day it did come out, and what has it been like in your office?
I think like most Americans, voting is certainly showing that. I woke up to that decision, and you're sick to your stomach. Because we humans hang on to, whatever piece of potential hope. But frankly, we've been preparing for that ultimate decision by this Supreme Court in New Mexico for more than a year. Because the risks in this national political debate about our constitutional rights to privacy and a constitutional right to reproductive care, abortion, and abortion care has been the subject of such angst and anger and misinformation in this country for longer than just the last months.
When you say you have been preparing at the State House and in your office, how did you prepare? What plans did you make?
Well, the first thing that we did is we had an antiquated criminalization of abortion statute on the books. Never had been used. Frankly, I would say that most providers, most attorneys, and certainly most New Mexicans had no idea that it existed. So we actually, in 2019, I tried to repeal it right after I was elected, and I failed by just a couple of votes. And we finally got it done, and we did that a year before this ultimate decision by the Supreme Court. And we invested in more family planning, more access to contraceptives, in addition to our core family planning access points like public health, school-based health centers, making sure it's readily available through your physicians, our physician access programs, all of our infectious disease and public health harm reduction. All those investments have all been targeted to improve our public health outcomes related to the potential that Roe v. Wade was always a risk.
Governor, New Mexico is a blue state situated between Texas and Arizona. You even share a bit of a border with Oklahoma as well. They all have abortion bans of some kind, and they're all quite conservative. Now, I don't think that the leaders of Texas and Arizona are going to be thrilled if you open more clinics and you refuse extradition. So, are you worried about reprisals from those states and your leaderships?
In this context, if you're not thinking or concerned about what could occur and being embattled in litigation, I think this is what the Supreme Court teed up. The first issue is that they have discriminated against women and other populations, including LGBTQ populations, and they are limiting healthcare access. Chilling, outrageous, discriminatory, and we should do everything in our power to do something about it. But the second thing that they've done is they've invited states now to fight with each other, sue each other, and create in a number of really harsh, I'm looking for the right word, the fact that another state, frankly, can try to sue a provider that's licensed here because they're also licensed in another state, challenging all of our current, insurance, certification, regulatory aspects for healthcare access in this country. Because in my view, they're trying to control women is the most disgusting and despicable aspect, frankly, of this particular decision. It is what it is inviting.
Can you imagine Texas, forgive me?
I do. I imagine Texas and their Attorney General. Look what's going on in Indiana. I absolutely imagine that we will have politicians for political gain on this issue in the most narrow manner who will prosecute and persecute women, children, their families, and providers. And to take that to the nth degree.
You anticipate Texas law enforcement, backed up by the politics and the politicians of Texas, possibly making arrests on women seeking abortions in New Mexico?
Certainly attempting. If I didn't think that, there would be no reason to have an executive order saying this is what we'll do to protect providers and patients and their families in New Mexico.
Governor, explain what was in the executive order.
The executive order was to, frankly, prepare the state and to make sure that government, state government, could not be used as a vehicle to support another state who would reach in here to prevent their citizens and residents from seeking abortion and abortion care in New Mexico, including that they would prosecute and, in my view, persecute then providers who are providing that access, who might also have a license in their states. So as to make it clear that where we will cooperate, and we still will, on other real criminal actions where you do want to do extradition and cooperate, I don't consider this a criminal action. Neither does New Mexico.
So you envision the possibility of opening even more clinics?
I do.
How are the clinics responding to this new reality? Because you are situated between and among states that are going to come down very hard on abortion, and I assume you're already seeing people coming from those states to New Mexico, to the few abortion clinics that you have.
We are. When you're a safe haven state, this is exactly the impact, which means you put real stress on your current provider system. And we are now seeing a situation where we have waiting lists.
What kind of politics have resulted in your policy and your reaction to dogs? What kind of opposition have you felt?
I haven't seen the same kind of opposition that we're seeing around the country. I've seen the opposite. You know, a rallying of support by most New Mexicans who were outraged by not only this decision, but quite frankly, the Clarence Thomas writing that said, look, as long as we're there, let's talk about privacy issues and well-settled law for other populations.
I'm talking with Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico.
The salmon and waterfall
Radio Lab
will have kids
probably had a
almost never.
What happens when your worst enemy is you?
10 days to write this book. If it was not done then, you commit suicide.
You versus you. From Radio Lab. Listen wherever you get podcasts.
For 8 years, there's been an unsolved murder of a prominent couple in New Jersey. When did things start to not go well with the investigation?
We met with the prosecutor's office on Tuesday. That's when things started to go off the rails.
I'm Nancy Solomon. Join me on a journey into the crazy world of Garden State crime and politics. Now you can listen to the entire 8-part series, Dead End, a New Jersey political murder mystery from WNYC Studios. Available wherever you get podcasts.
You are up for re-election. Your opponent in the race is a Republican named Mark Ronchetti, and he has said that 15 weeks should be the limit for abortion. So he's not an absolutist on this. He's not on the right wing on this spectrum. Would you support some limit or compromise, as he's suggesting?
No. There are if you really are in a situation where you are protecting women's privacy rights and the relationship between their medical providers, my attitudes and my personal decisions and the government's have no bearing on those personal decisions. There is no question that I believe, like many Americans, that abortion should be rare. And the reason I believe that is because we should be doing more for violence, rape, domestic abuse, incest, underage sexual activity, non-consensual, all of it. If we did better family planning and comprehensive sex education and made contraceptives more available and we were better at primary care access, then you get to the place where we should all be preventing unwanted, unexpected pregnancies. But to say that I can make a personal decision for women who currently do not have those options, particularly in states where they don't have access to contraceptives, well, that is outrageous to me.
Your state has the highest percentage of Latino voters of any state, and that's a demographic that supported you quite heavily. But Latino voters in the state have tended not to support abortion rights in the majority. Is there a risk here for you and for the Democratic Party in the state of New Mexico?
Well, I don't think so. And in New Mexico, where we're a Hispanic majority, minority majority state, and I am certainly, you're talking about 400 years, my family's in that same space, and many of us, not all of us, but many of us are Catholic and very clear about what the church says about abortion and abortion access and even contraceptives. But if you take a step back, even here in New Mexico, and given that we repealed our criminalization of abortion, most Hispanic families and women, most Hispanic men today do not want, so the majority of those voters do not want the government in this space.
So you don't see this hurting your chances for re-election?
I do not.
Just the opposite.
Just the opposite.
Governor, in the past few years, particularly coming in the midst of the Trump years and their aftermath, we have heard warnings about civil war of various kinds and degrees, and certainly it's something this country has experienced in the past. Are you concerned about political violence as you declare New Mexico a pro-choice state amidst Texas and Arizona who are on the opposite side?
That's a really hard question because I want to respond in this way, that we don't need to be concerned about that violence because New Mexico isn't going to tolerate that. But in fact, what we're seeing across the country and in some circumstances, even here, we know that the threats of violence are real, that we're seeing that tension escalate all across the country. And if I or anyone suggests that you shouldn't be concerned about it, it's an immature response. I'm hopeful that this is a state and other states that protect people, and that protection and that recognition of your own civil rights and choices can create a space where we can have discourse about better solutions to public health issues. I mean, we are not talking in the context of the Dobbs decision, as I started in this interview, about child well-being, maternal health, and poverty. I hope New Mexico can be a beacon for those investments and interventions, and that will create a better space for all Americans.
Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Michelle Lujan Grisham is governor of New Mexico, and she's running for a second term in November. I'm David Remnick, and that's our program. I want to thank you for joining us. See you soon.
The New Yorker Radio Hour is a co-production of WNYC Studios and The New Yorker. Our theme music was composed and performed by Meryl Lovis for New York, with additional music by Louis Mitchell. This episode was produced by Emily Botein, Ave Carrillo, Rita Green, Calabria, David Krasnow, Louis Mitchell, and Roxana Guzwelle.
Along with Jeffrey Martin, Nicole, and Michael May. And we had assistance from Harrison Kinkline and James Napoli.
The New Yorker Radio Hour is supported in part by the Sharina Endowment Fund. Debt, Sex, and Money is an interview podcast featuring unusually personal conversations with people you don't know and people you do.
I said, I'm the one, I gotta be the one who gets fixed. And I remember laying there, and he had just snipped the first tube, best deference tube. You could hear it snip.
From actor Jeff Davis, student loans to near-death experiences, we talk about it. I'm Anna Sale. Find Death, Sex, and Money wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anna Sale, and I host Death, Sex, and Money. It's a podcast where people open up about the things they think about a lot and need to talk about more. Join our community. Find Death, Sex, and Money wherever you get your podcasts.
Listener support. WNYC Studios.
This is the New Yorker Radio Hour, a co-production of WNYC Studios and The New Yorker.
This is the New Yorker Radio Hour. I'm David Remnick. Evan Pushek is known professionally as the Nerd Writer. His videos on YouTube have racked up millions of views, dissecting a wide variety of topics from Shakespeare and Tarkovsky to Martin Luther King.
I'm happy to join with you today.
Martin Luther King's Silent Dream speech is arguably the most important and most well-known speech of the 20th century. It's 1,667 words and 17 minutes long, absolutely riddled with big, difficult terms.
But as the name goes by suggests, the Nerd Writer goes very deep on pop culture as well. He'll talk, for example, about the debt that Bruno Mars owes to James Brown.
If you want to understand why at weddings across America and the world this year, thousands, probably millions of people will be lunging their pinky fingers over their heads, you have to go back to 1967.
Our producer, Goffin and Kutubuele, is an avid consumer of video essays, and he talked with Kuchak about this new genre of nonfiction born on the internet. Here's Goffin.
On YouTube, you are the nerd. How did you end up here, and were you always sort of a very studious learner type?
No, I wasn't. In high school, I definitely wasn't. I was sort of a kind of class clown. I'm still really goofy, but even back then, I was obsessed with things that I didn't connect to education. I was obsessed with Superman and comic books and things like that. But in college and after college, I became really frustrated with this feeling of not understanding what I believe and think about things. I think at some point in your life, you want to have a sense of who you are. The nerd writer and the book are ways of expressing and understanding and working out the things that I believe.
So I want us to look at one of your video essays together. And actually, it's an essay. You write about the same topic, or you write about the same universe in your book. That universe being Lord of the Rings. And the video essay you have is about Gandalf. Gandalf, for those who don't know, is a magician, the better Dumbledore, among other accolades.
Careful with that. You're going to anger a lot of people.
I'm willing to die on that hill. The video essay is about Gandalf's eyes.
In The Lord of the Rings, Ian McKellen's eyes, in particular, carry a heavy load. Gandalf is the moral center of the story. He's also the one who understands the significance of events in the broadest sweep. This means that Gandalf has to broadcast a whole lot of story information to the audience.
Okay, I have so much to say about this. Great.
Okay, so we're talking about the difference between the written essay and the video essay. And I don't think I could have done this in a written essay with anywhere near the same justice.
Describe an instance of Gandalf's eyes and acting like it's really meaningful to you. Like, what is it that you feel in your body when you watch that?
So the one that comes to mind is when he's sitting with Pippin in the upper levels of Minas Tirith at the end of the Battle of Pelennor Fields in the third movie, where it's all this war.
And I'm just going to translate. Gandalf is with another character. They're in a castle. The movie's almost over.
Okay, so he's sitting there with Pippin, battle's raging outside these doors, and there's this moment of quiet and silence where Pippin is feeling despair about the chances. And he says, I can't believe it's the end. And Gandalf says, no, it's not going to be the end. Death, if death comes, is only another path, the path we all must take. And he describes what's sort of on the other side of this veil of death. And in describing it, what he does is move his eyes just ever so slightly over and up and into the distance, as if he's looking through the veil of death to the far green country that he's describing. And as a viewer, what I'm feeling is that I'm seeing this thing he's describing. When I'm just looking at his face, specifically I'm just looking at his eyes, and I'm getting that emotion of, let me try to describe this. So, in the book I described that I am not religious, I'm a non-believer, I don't believe there's life after death. But when Gandalf is describing these rolling hills and this far green country, this sort of vision of heaven, I sort of feel and believe it, that when you're inside a fantasy world, Ian McKellen, his eyes are bringing me to that place. They are immersing me in the story, showing me something I can't see on screen, and making me believe something that I don't actually really believe in the real world.
In the Gandalf video, it seems like you're trying to convey the same awe that you feel to us.
Trying to figure out what is YouTube good specifically. What are its strengths? What sets it apart from TV or books or podcasts or whatever.
Yeah, so what is YouTube good at?
So I think YouTube is attracted to breaking news. It's like it's a lot of the classic Marshall McLuhan, medium is the message. He was talking about movies, how movies in the theater, it's a very passive experience because you are sitting there in the dark and these giant images are washing over you, and it's high def, and you're just kind of passively engaging with it. Then that compared to that TV, you're sitting in your home, the lights are on, the windows are open, things are happening, you have the remote in your hand. It is a more active, engaged environment. McLuhan said that TV was really good at showing processes, which is why you get something like instant replay in sports. Because we're just as interested in seeing the process of the play as the result is. So when you slow time to examine the catch from multiple angles, it's a way of participating in that image. And TV is a participatory medium. I think YouTube takes that even further and is even more obsessed with processes. And that's a function of the ways we interact with it. So you're sitting at the computer, holding your phone, you're scrubbing through the video, you're double tapping to rewind or changing the speed or whatever. Showing the process of something is really satisfying. The things I'm trying to describe or understand with my videos are the ways that those pieces of art or those pieces of information or ideas made me feel. Like I felt some kind of awe or some kind of arresting emotion about this. There's a famous Virginia Woolf quote. She was an extraordinary essayist, of course. And she said that an essay should lay us under a spell with its first word, and we should only wait for fresh with its last. And so that idea of putting you under a spell is part of my aim as someone who's making videos.
One of the things that, as I've been reflecting like a bit on video essays, I think one of the things that draws me to them is that it feels like, I think that if you grow up on the internet, so millennials and younger, you are receiving videos all the time. You're receiving videos like constantly, like funny videos, all kinds of videos. And I think that there's something about the video essay and the video essayists that I follow where it feels like, I get sort of meditative reflection. Because I live on the internet, that's the place where I can get like a meditative thought.
Yeah. I actually think what you're describing is what do people come to the essay for? Period. Like the written essay.
Go there, do it, tell me.
The essay is not a treatise, it's not term paper, it's not something systematically covering everything about the subject. It is an inquiry. It is thought articulated in one case in prose, in this case in audiovisual medium, you don't come to the essay to necessarily become an expert. You come to it because you want to see thought articulated. The cool thing about the video essay is that you are seeing these people's thoughts articulated with a whole new toolbox. And the ones who use the specific toolbox of the medium that they're working in are the ones that I am most interested in.
David Butler, who's known on YouTube as the Nerd, his new book is called Escaping to Meaning. He's spoken to the radio as Botan Figurative Wit. This week, in a special digital issue, the New Yorker is exploring the changing contours of family. And here's a conversation with Laura Wasser, a divorce lawyer to the stars. Plus, a comic strip by Brianna Fink illustrates some of the parenting advice. That's all in our special issue this week at NewYorker.com/family. There's more to come on the New Yorker Radio Hour, so